The parking lot of the Clearfield Logistics Center smelled like diesel and frozen asphalt on Christmas Eve. At 9:14 in the evening, 11 hours into a shift unloading freight pallets in a refrigerated loading bay, Marcus Webb stood in the cold and listened to his supervisor tell him he was no longer employed. Raymond Briggs delivered the news with his coat open and a travel mug of coffee in his hand, the posture of a man who has decided that an unpleasant task completed quickly is the same as a task handled well. Around them, the last of the night crew filtered out through the side gate, steel-toed boots scraping frozen concrete, nobody looking directly at Marcus. "Effective immediately," Raymond said. "Clean out your locker tonight. I would rather not have you back in the building after the holiday." Marcus had worked at Clearfield for 4 years without calling in sick once. When he had taken an afternoon off to watch his 8-year-old daughter play a talking snowflake in a school production, 2 lines, both of which she forgot, and both times she looked up from the stage at her father with wide, searching eyes, as if he were the only fixed point in a room full of movement. Raymond had marked it as an unauthorized absence. He had been collecting those marks for months. "Is there anything I can do to—" "Decision is made," Raymond said, and turned toward his car. "If you already feel it, that tightening in your chest, hit the like button and subscribe to Hidden Ledger. Drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you are watching from. Because this story is just getting started. And the part they do not see coming? Keep watching." Several of Marcus's co-workers kept moving. Kevin Marsh, a man Marcus had covered for 3 consecutive Saturdays when Kevin's wife had her knee surgery, never mentioned, never expected back, glanced over his shoulder once, then looked at the pavement and kept walking. Marcus stood in the parking lot with his hands in his jacket pockets and watched Raymond Briggs's taillights dissolve into the dark until the lot was empty. Then he went inside, signed the termination envelope someone had left at the front desk, emptied his locker into a paper bag, and walked out into the night. Emma was at her grandmother's across town. Marcus had planned to take the bus home, sleep 5 hours, and be at Ruth's door by 7 in the morning, with the wrapped box currently hidden under his bed. A sketchbook and a set of colored pencils Emma had circled in a catalog back in September, which he had put on layaway in October and paid off $14 at a time. Each payment he made in person, at the customer service counter, because that was the only way the store accepted layaway installments. 14 separate trips over 7 weeks. He had thought about Emma each time, not in a large or sentimental way, but in the specific, ordinary way of a father who has decided the most honest expression of love he can offer is to follow through on the things he said he would do. The bus stop was 4 blocks east. He had covered 2 of them when he saw the woman on the wall. She was sitting on the low stone ledge outside the Meridian Arms apartment building, a leather handbag on her lap and a wool coat that had once been expensive. She was somewhere past 70, perhaps further, with white hair and a way of holding herself that suggested she had spent most of her life in rooms where she was the one who controlled the temperature. She was not crying. She was sitting perfectly still, the kind of stillness that belongs to people who have passed through panic and arrived somewhere quieter on the other side. But she was shivering, and when Marcus came close enough to read her face clearly, he could see from her color that she had been sitting there for a long time. "Ma'am," she looked up without alarm, as if she had decided long ago that help would arrive and had simply been waiting on the timeline. "I appear to have misplaced my evening," she said. Her voice was clear and even, the kind that had once carried across conference tables. "My telephone died approximately an hour ago. I have been waiting for someone to pass." Her name was Eleanor. A car service had brought her to the Meridian Arms to deliver Christmas gifts to a former colleague's family. When she came back out, the driver had gone. The return pickup he was supposed to arrange had not materialized. Her phone was at 22% when she sat down to call her son. By the time she realized the call had not gone through, it was at 4%. Then nothing. "I have my son's number," she said, "but it is written down at home. I never could trust myself to remember numbers." Small pause. "That is a confession." Marcus looked at the street. The buses had thinned. It was below freezing. She had been sitting out here for close to an hour, and her hands, folded carefully in her lap, were trembling with something she was keeping controlled. "Come inside," he said. "I live 2 blocks from here." She looked at him for a moment, the way a person looks when they are deciding whether to trust a stranger and have concluded that circumstances have narrowed the question considerably. I do not want to impose. You are not, Marcus said. He helped her stand. She took his arm without ceremony, and they walked. Marcus Webb had been a single father for 3 years and 2 months. His wife Dana had died from a brain aneurysm on a Tuesday in October, which was the most ordinary possible framing for something that had restructured every day that came after it. She was 31 years old. Their daughter Emma was 5. Dana had been the kind of person who named the houseplants and remembered everyone's coffee order and laughed at things that were not quite funny because she found effort more endearing than polish. She had kept a running list on her phone of things she wanted to do with Emma when Emma was old enough. A tide pool walk, a glass-blowing class, the Natural History Museum on a Tuesday when it was quiet. Marcus had found the list 8 months after she died, tucked inside a notes app he had opened looking for a grocery list. He had read it twice, and then put his phone face down on the counter and stood there for a while. Emma had Dana's laugh. The same delayed start quality, where the amusement arrived a full second after the moment that caused it, as if she needed that beat to be certain it was real. Marcus had noticed this in Emma about a year after Dana died, and he had not been prepared for it, and he had sat with it quietly in the kitchen for a few minutes before Emma came in asking about dinner, and he had said something about spaghetti, and the evening had continued in the way that evenings do. He had stayed in the apartment on Garland Street because Emma had drawn butterflies on the inside wall of her closet in washable marker, and he could not bring himself to paint over them. He had kept the job at Clearfield because the schedule ended at 9:30 most nights, and the school pickup at 3:15 fell in the gap between shifts if he caught the right bus. He had learned, over 3 years, exactly which bus to catch and which to miss. Which stop gave him 2 extra minutes when he needed to stop at the pharmacy. Which mornings Emma woke before the alarm, and which mornings she would sleep until he called her twice. He had learned the specific weight of Emma's backpack when she had forgotten her library book, and the sound of the upstairs neighbor's radiator pipe that meant it was cold enough to add a layer under her coat. He had become the kind of man who does not announce what he knows, because he learned it by paying close attention. And paying close attention to the people you love is not something that requires recognition. He had made himself into the kind of man his life required, and told himself this was enough, on the evenings when telling himself was what was needed. His mother-in-law Ruth had offered to help with rent 3 times. 3 times Marcus had thanked her and said no, because accepting felt like something ending that he was not yet ready to name. He had also spent 4 years quietly correcting Raymond Briggs's mistakes. Inventory manifests submitted without checking, discrepancies that would have appeared on quarterly reports as unexplained losses. Marcus stayed after his shift sign-off and fixed them, filing the corrections under Raymond's team number, because that was the number on the work order. It had not occurred to him to do otherwise. His father had said once that the most important thing a man can do is hold the work steady when someone else lets it drop, because you always know whether the job got done, even when nobody else checks. His father had said this while changing a flat tire on a neighbor's truck at 6:30 in the morning in December, in a driveway that was not his, because the neighbor was 73, and Marcus's father had seen the flat from the sidewalk and could not walk past it. Marcus had been 12 years old. He had held the flashlight the whole time without being asked to. He had believed his father's instruction his whole adult life. He believed it still, though some evenings with considerably more stubbornness than others. He made Eleanor tea in his kitchen, which was clean in the way of small kitchens where nothing is wasted and nothing is left out. She sat with both hands wrapped around the mug and said, "This is very kind of you," in the direct way of someone who does not use the phrase lightly and means it to count. He offered her Emma's room for the night. She refused twice. He pointed out that the buses had stopped running, that it was 11 degrees outside, and that Emma would not be home until morning. "One condition," Eleanor said. "All right. Tell me her name." "Emma." "Then I will use Emma's room," she said. "And I will tell her so myself in the morning if she will allow it." While he made up the bed, Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, and they talked in the easy, unhurried way of 2 people who have nothing to prove to each other. She asked about Emma. How old? What did she like? Marcus told her about the butterfly drawings in the closet, about the deep-sea book she had borrowed 3 times, about the taxonomy arguments Emma had with her teacher over the proper classification of sea slugs, which Emma had approached as a matter of scientific ethics rather than opinion. "She sounds like someone who finds precision comforting," Eleanor said. "She does," Marcus said. "She always has." My son was like that. Very precise as a boy. He used to correct the newspaper. A brief warmth crossed her face. I encouraged it. I may have been slightly wrong about where the limits of that habit should be. Marcus asked, without pressing, what she had done. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. The way someone is quiet when the question has a long answer, and they are deciding how much of it to give. I spent 40 years building a company, she said finally. My son runs it now. He runs it better than I did, which was the point. She looked at her mug. I find retirement puzzling. I am told this is normal. Do you miss it? I miss the mornings, she said. I miss sitting down at a desk before anyone else arrived and thinking through what the day needed. The rest I can leave. She looked around the kitchen, at the child's drawing held to the refrigerator by a magnet that said Grand Canyon, at the single mug tree with 4 mugs hanging from it, at the upright row of Emma's library books on the windowsill. What do your mornings look like? She asked. Marcus thought about this. Emma wakes up at 6:15 if I do not beat her to it. She wants toast, but what she actually eats is most of one piece and then information about whatever she is reading. Then we walk to school, then the bus. She tells you about her reading over breakfast. Every morning. Good, Eleanor said, and she said it with the satisfaction of someone filing a useful confirmation. My son and I did the same thing. Different topic most days. It is how children learn to have opinions in front of people they trust. He brought the second blanket from the hall closet. Dana had bought it at a street market 3 weeks before she died. A dark green wool blanket she had run her hand across twice before deciding on it. The way she touched things she was genuinely considering. He had washed it and never used it. Eleanor looked at it for a moment when he brought it in. She did not say anything. She accepted it the way she had accepted everything he offered, without diminishing it, and without making more of it than it was. You have someone's things in that closet, she said. It was not a question, and it was not intrusive. She said it the way she might note that the teapot was still warm. My wife, Marcus said, 3 years ago. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Emma has her eyes. Marcus looked at her. You have only seen a photograph. The one on the shelf above the radiator. She has the same eyes. The kind that are already thinking about the next thing. She folded her hands around her mug. I am sorry, Marcus. He said thank you in the way you say it when you mean it, without wanting to expand on it. Before she went to bed, Eleanor paused beside the Christmas tree in the corner. She looked at the ornaments, most of them Emma's, paper and pipe cleaner, a few painted clothespins that had lost most of their paint in patches. 2 of them were small folded paper stars, slightly crooked, more careful than the rest. Did Emma make all of these? Eleanor asked. Most of them, Marcus said. 2 are older. Eleanor looked at the 2 paper stars for a moment, without saying anything further. Then she went to Emma's room, set her phone on the nightstand to charge, and said goodnight, and Marcus pulled the door closed. He slept on the couch. He lay in the dark and looked at the ceiling and thought about January rent and the folded termination letter in his jacket pocket. And then he stopped thinking about those things and thought about his father in the cold in December, changing a tire on a truck that was not his, because he had seen it from the sidewalk and could not walk past it. And then he stopped thinking about that too, and slept. At 7:03 in the morning, Emma came home. Ruth dropped her at the building entrance because of the ice on the side streets. Emma came upstairs with her overnight bag and her hair still half in a braid from the previous night, and found a woman she had never seen before, sitting at the kitchen table with a coffee and one of the books from the shelf above the radiator. Emma stood in the doorway for a full 6 seconds. You slept in my room, she said. I did, Eleanor said. Your father told me your name. I owe you an explanation and possibly a trade. What kind of trade? Eleanor slid a flat package across the table, silver wrapped with a small card bearing Emma's name in handwriting that had been practiced for decades. I have 4 grandchildren. The eldest has strong opinions about paper airplanes. I brought her something she did not ask for. I believe you will find it more useful. Emma studied the package without opening it. You wrapped that this morning. I did. From what? I keep paper and a small piece of ribbon in my handbag, Eleanor said. It is a habit. Emma sat down across from her, and they talked for 40 minutes while Marcus made breakfast. He could hear both voices through the kitchen doorway, Emma's and Eleanor's beneath it, unhurried. The older woman asking questions, and listening to the full answer each time in the way of someone who had learned long ago that the most reliable way to understand a person is to hear what they choose to say when no one is pressing them. Emma asked what Eleanor's grandchildren were like. Eleanor described the eldest with obvious pleasure and considerable specificity. Her opinions about aerodynamics, her habit of writing the date on everything she owned, her distrust of any data point that could not be independently verified. "She sounds like me," Emma said. "She sounds exactly like you," Eleanor agreed. Emma appeared entirely satisfied by this. Then Emma asked, "Do you miss them at Christmas?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "I do. My son worries I am lonely. I tell him I am selective." Emma considered this with the particular gravity she applied to things that genuinely interested her. "That is different from lonely." Eleanor looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," she said. "It is." Emma thought about this a little longer. "Is your son good at worrying or bad at it?" "Very good at it," Eleanor said. "Unfortunately thorough." "Dad worries too," Emma said, in the tone of someone offering a piece of common ground. "But he does not tell me what about. He just gets quiet sometimes." Eleanor looked toward the kitchen doorway. "I imagine the quiet is the worrying." "Probably," Emma said, and went back to examining the package. Marcus stood at the counter and listened to this, and did not go in. If this story found its way to you, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Hidden Ledger posts new stories every week, and the one after this one is already waiting. Your support is what keeps the ledger open. At 10:47, Marcus's phone rang. The number was the Clearfield Logistics main line. Raymond Briggs was calling to confirm that the company would not be providing a reference letter, given the circumstances of the termination. If Marcus wanted his final paycheck processed before the new year, he should contact HR directly, as the office closed at noon on the 27th. "You understand," Raymond said, in the tone of a man who considers himself thoughtful for clarifying an unpleasant deadline, "that this is just how the process works." Marcus said he understood. He ended the call and stood in the hallway with his phone in his hand and looked at the thin line of light under Emma's room door. Emma was in there, showing Eleanor the butterflies she had drawn on the closet wall 2 years ago, their voices low and easy, and then he went back to the kitchen and finished the eggs without saying a word about the call. Eleanor did not ask. He offered nothing. He had not spent 4 years learning to move quietly through difficulty in order to put it on display on Christmas morning. What he did not know was that Eleanor Vance's son had been awake since 2 o'clock. His name was James Vance. He had been trying to reach his mother since 10:30 the previous night, when Arturo, the car service driver who had handled Eleanor's household account for 6 years, called James's assistant to report that Eleanor had not returned from the Meridian Arms within the window she had estimated, and that he had waited 40 minutes and then left. James had called his mother 61 times between 10:30 and 2 o'clock. He had called the Meridian Arms building manager. He had called the car service dispatcher. He had sent 2 people from a private security firm to the Meridian Arms address, where they found no sign of Eleanor. At 2:14, the security firm confirmed that Eleanor's phone had briefly connected to a cell tower 2 blocks from the Meridian Arms, before going dark. Last registered signal, the corner of Garland Street and 10th. James Vance left his house at 2:20. He was not a man who waited for intermediaries when the situation was his mother. In the hours he spent parked on Garland Street, walking the block, returning to the car, he thought about Eleanor the way fear strips a person down to the specific, not her in summary but her in detail. The way she had taught him, when he was small, to notice what a room was not saying. The way she had sat across from him at a kitchen table much like Marcus's when he was 9 years old, the week after his father left, and said, "The shape of our life has changed. The substance of it has not. You are loved by the same people in the same measure. We will simply arrange ourselves differently now." He had not fully understood it at 9. He had spent most of his adult life trying to be equal to it. She had built a company from a 2-room office and a borrowed line of credit. She had run it for 40 years, with a combination of precision and patience that James had watched up close and never entirely learned to replicate. When she handed it to him, she had said only, "You know what it is for. Do not lose track of that." He had never asked her to spell it out. He already knew. He walked the Garland Street block 3 times in the dark, checking every entrance, every lit window. He was parked again at 3 o'clock in the morning, watching a street he had never been on in his life, because his mother was somewhere on it, and that was the only fact that mattered. His assistant called at 7:48 to report that Eleanor's phone had powered back on and was registering at 412 Garland Street, Apartment 3B. James started the car before the call was finished. Marcus answered the door at 8:11 in a clean shirt with the controlled expression of a man who has been expecting something to go wrong and has decided to meet it without flinching. The man at the door was tall, wearing a coat that Marcus would later understand cost more than 2 months of his former Clearfield salary, with the particular stillness of someone who has spent decades in rooms where composure is professional currency. He was somewhere in his mid-50s and had the look of a man who had been awake for most of the night and had decided not to acknowledge it. "My name is James Vance," he said. "I believe my mother is here." Marcus opened the door. "She is in the kitchen. Come in." What James Vance saw: a small apartment, clean and deliberate. A couch with a blanket folded at one end. A Christmas tree in the corner, with handmade ornaments and 3 wrapped presents beneath it, 2 of which were small. A kitchen, where his mother was sitting across from an 8-year-old girl, both of them looking at a drawing Emma was making on the back of an envelope. His mother looked entirely at ease. The girl looked entirely unsurprised. Eleanor looked up. "James," she said, "you look terrible. I have been awake since 2 o'clock. "I had a very comfortable night," Eleanor said. "Emma has butterflies in her closet. Sit down." Marcus set a 3rd chair at the table and poured coffee without being asked. James watched him do this, watched the economy of it, the quiet competence of a man who has arranged his life around doing the necessary thing without waiting to be told. He watched Emma explain something to his mother about the distinction between a monarch and a viceroy butterfly. He watched Marcus move back to the counter and not look at either of them, giving the room its space. James looked at the blanket folded on the couch, at the charger cord stretched from the wall outlet to the bedroom doorway, at the 3 presents under the tree, 2 of which were small, at the 2 slightly crooked paper stars on the tree that were older and more careful than the rest. He looked at all of it in the particular way of a man who has spent a career noticing what the surface of things says about the life beneath them. He turned to Marcus. "Tell me what happened last night." "From the beginning," Marcus told him. He did not mention Raymond Briggs or the termination letter in his jacket pocket or January rent. He said he had found Eleanor on the wall. She had been sitting in the cold for close to an hour. He had brought her home. That was the full account. It took 90 seconds. When Marcus finished, James was quiet. "My mother has been in this city for 30 years, he said. "She has sat on the board of 2 hospitals and 3 civic organizations. She has endowed a reading program in 11 schools. In 30 years, she has never once called me at 10 o'clock to ask why her driver did not come back." He looked at Marcus. "She sat on a stone wall in the dark for an hour. She told me this morning that 3 people walked past her before you stopped. I need you to understand what I mean when I say that. Anyone would have stopped," Marcus said. "No," James said quietly. "They did not." Marcus looked at his coffee. He did not say anything. "What can I do for you?" James asked. "Nothing. She needed somewhere to be. I had somewhere." "That is not what I mean," James said. "I mean, what can I do for you? Not as a thank you, as a question." Emma looked up from the drawing. "Dad lost his job last night," she said. Marcus looked at his daughter. Emma met his eyes with the expression of an 8-year-old who has decided that complete information is more useful than tact, an expression he had been watching develop for 2 years and had never found a way to argue with. "Emma," he said. "She asked what I wanted for the new year." Emma indicated Eleanor. "I said for things to be less hard. She asked what was hard." Eleanor looked at Marcus across the top of Emma's head and said nothing. James set his mug down. "Who is your employer?" "Was," Marcus said. "Clearfield Logistics. Garfield Industrial District." A pause. "It does not matter. I will find something. Tell me your supervisor's name." Marcus looked at him. He let a moment pass. "Raymond Briggs." James Vance said nothing more about it that morning. He stayed another hour, sitting at the kitchen table, while Eleanor and Emma finished the drawing, and Marcus kept the mugs full. Before he left, he shook Marcus's hand. Eleanor embraced Marcus in the doorway, with the directness of someone who has decided not to waste the gesture. Then she crouched down and took Emma's face in both hands and said something to her that Marcus could not hear. James paused in the doorway before leaving. He looked back at the apartment, at the couch, at the tree, at the 3 presents, for just a moment. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Marcus could see him taking inventory the same way Marcus himself sometimes did at the end of a good day, filing it away carefully so it would not be lost. Emma watched their car from the window until it turned off Garland Street. Then she looked at the drawing on the table. "She told me to remind you," Emma said, "that good men are not always recognized in the moment." Emma turned the envelope over in her hands. "She said the ledger catches up." "Did she?" Marcus said. "What is a ledger?" "A book where you write down what is owed." Emma thought about this. "Like a scoreboard," she said. "Something like that." James Vance did not call Marcus in the days that followed. He did not send flowers or issue public statements, or arrange for anyone to appear at Marcus's door with a large check. What he did was quieter and more permanent. Clearfield Logistics operated 6 warehouse facilities across the region. Its primary real estate lease, the Garfield Industrial Site, 11 acres including the main loading facility, was held through a commercial property trust. That trust's largest single investor was a holding company called Vance Capital Partners. Raymond Briggs's termination of Marcus Webb had not been processed in compliance with Clearfield's own internal policy. There had been no formal performance review, no written warning within the preceding 90 days, no HR-approved authorization for the immediate dismissal clause he had invoked. The performance record Raymond submitted in November contained 3 tardiness citations that did not correspond to the actual clock-in logs on file. Someone had entered them manually, backdated, in the 2 weeks before the termination. A labor attorney might have found this interesting. James Vance's legal team found it considerably more than that. They also found the manifests, 14 of them, across 4 years, filed under Raymond Briggs's team number, but corrected in a second hand during hours when Raymond was not logged as present. Clearfield's internal audit cross-referenced those corrections against terminal access records and confirmed that Marcus had made every one of them, consistently, after his own shift sign-off, and without attribution. Those 14 corrections had prevented an estimated $340,000 in inventory misattribution and misrouted freight over 4 years. The review also surfaced a pattern. 18 months earlier, a warehouse team lead named Patricia Shen had filed an internal complaint against Raymond Briggs for what she described as a manufactured performance record and a retaliatory transfer following a disagreement over scheduling. Her complaint had been marked, resolved, and closed without investigation. She had been moved to a facility in a different district and had not pursued the matter further because pursuing it would have required resources she did not have. Raymond Briggs had been managing a logistics facility on the invisible work of a man he fired on Christmas Eve, and he had done something very similar before, to someone who had fewer options to push back. Both cases were now before Clearfield's board. The findings reached the operations director on December 28th. Raymond was placed on administrative leave pending review. His reference file was flagged across the company's HR network. The operations director, who had spent 30 years in freight and recognized immediately what the documents showed, made 2 calls, one to the board and one to Marcus Webb. On December 29th, Marcus received a certified letter from Clearfield Logistics. It contained a formal apology, a full reversal of his termination, back pay covering the period since dismissal, and an offer of reinstatement effective January 2nd, along with a retroactive promotion review that the HR director personally called to discuss. He also received a second letter. This one bore the letterhead of Harborline Employment Services, a workforce placement and professional development firm funded in part through Vance Capital Partners. It offered Marcus a position as a regional logistics coordinator at a starting salary of $67,500 annually, with full benefits and a fixed schedule that included a provision allowing him to leave in time to make a 3:15 school pickup. The letter was signed by the placement director. At the bottom, in handwriting he recognized from the card on Emma's Christmas package, Eleanor had written 5 words. "The ledger knows your name." James Vance called Marcus on New Year's Eve. Not his assistant, James himself. "You did not have to do any of that," Marcus said. "I know. The reinstatement and the harbor line offer both. You did not owe me anything." "I did not do it because I owed you," James said. "I did it because a man spent Christmas on a couch so my mother could sleep in a warm room, and then did not mention it when I asked what he needed." Outside the window, Emma was at the kitchen table, working on a drawing she had been planning for 3 days. A butterfly with a crown, surrounded by smaller butterflies, in concentric rings, which she had decided was Eleanor's butterfly, because Eleanor was a queen, a determination arrived at independently, and not subject to negotiation. Raymond Briggs is not worth this much of your attention, Marcus said. The paperwork needed correcting, James said. We corrected it. A pause. My mother has also been repeating one sentence to me every few days since Christmas, that your daughter said the thing she wanted most for the new year was for things to be less hard. Emma says direct things. My mother considers it a virtue. She also says Emma has a remarkable command of butterfly taxonomy. She does, Marcus said. James was quiet for a moment. Then, she told me, by the way, that you had a blanket she recognized. She said it had the feeling of something that had been owned and loved and kept a long time without being used. He paused. I do not know exactly what she meant by it, but she asked me to mention it. She said you would understand. Marcus looked at the tree, at the two small paper stars, slightly crooked, that Emma had learned not to straighten. I understand, he said. Take the harbor line position, James said. Or take the reinstatement. Or take both for a month while you decide. The offer does not expire. Okay, Marcus said. One more thing. My mother would like to take Emma to the butterfly exhibit at the Natural History Museum in February, if you are agreeable. She has already located the specific wing with the monarchs and sent me a map of it with annotations. Marcus looked at Emma, who was adding a second crown to the largest butterfly, because a queen, she had explained that morning, might have more than one depending on the occasion. I will ask Emma, he said. I already did, James said. She said yes, and also that I should know the viceroy mimics the monarch's coloring for protection, and that this is called Batesian mimicry, and that you could explain it further if I had questions. She has been telling everyone that since October. She is right about it, James said. Happy New Year, Marcus. He took the harbor line position. His first day was January 8th. He left at 3:10 each afternoon and was at the school gate before the bell. Raymond Briggs did not find comparable work in logistics for a long time, a fact Marcus learned indirectly 6 months later and spent no further time on. Patricia Shen's internal complaint was formally reopened. She was offered reinstatement with back pay at her original facility. She accepted. Eleanor came for the museum visit in February. She and Emma spent 45 minutes in the monarch wing, during which Eleanor learned more about the precise visual difference between a monarch and a viceroy than she had ever expected to need. They spent another 20 minutes in the gift shop, where Eleanor bought 3 field guides Emma had not requested and a small enamel pin of a viceroy butterfly that Emma immediately pressed through the lapel of her jacket. Before they left the shop, Eleanor opened the inside cover of a 4th book, a field guide to North American butterflies, and wrote her phone number in it in careful handwriting and slid it across to Emma. If you have a taxonomy question your father cannot answer, Eleanor said, which I suspect is unlikely, you may call me. Emma looked at the number, then at Eleanor. What if I just want to talk? Eleanor held her gaze for a long moment. That is also an acceptable reason to call. They had lunch at a cafe around the corner from the museum. Marcus ordered coffee. Eleanor ordered tea. Emma delivered a thorough account of everything she had already told Eleanor, and Eleanor listened as if every word were new. On the bus home, Emma leaned against Marcus's arm and was quiet for a few blocks, which was itself unusual enough to notice. Then she said, she did not have to come. No, Marcus said, but she wanted to. Emma watched the city moving past the window, the last light of February sitting low and pale over the rooftops. Because you were kind to her on Christmas. Something like that. Emma turned this over. So if you do a kind thing, sometimes the kind thing comes back. Marcus looked at his daughter. She was wearing the viceroy pin on her jacket and had drawn a monarch in marker on the back of her left hand, sometime during the bus ride, the wings slightly smudged from where she had pressed it against the cold window glass. Sometimes, he said. Not always, but sometimes. Emma nodded in the slow, deliberate way she nodded when she was filing something away for later. Then she said, we should do more kind things. Yeah, just in case, she said. But also because. She looked at him. Because it is what you do. Marcus looked out the window. 3 years of early alarms and $14 layaway payments, and evenings calculated to the dollar. 4 years of manifest corrections filed under someone else's name, in a building where most people looked at the floor when something went wrong and kept moving. A stone wall in the cold on Christmas Eve. A couch and a spare blanket and a charger he had not needed since Dana died. A green wool blanket bought at a street market and never used. until the night it needed to be. His father's hands on someone else's tire iron at 6:30 in the morning in December. Emma's voice at a kitchen table, telling an elderly woman about the delayed start laugh she had inherited from a woman neither of them would ever stop missing. The ledger open. The ledger always open. Yeah, Marcus said. Because it is what you do. Thank you for staying until the balance was restored. The people who watch to the end are the ones who understand why the ledger matters. If this story stayed with you, the videos on your screen right now are ready to do the same. And if you have not subscribed yet, the ledger has your name. Hidden ledger. Every account settles.